Head Book 1, Bloodkin, by Kathy Ashford, me. And we're up to Chapter 3. Chapter 3. So, it must have been late morning when Charlie slowed his horse to a walk. The highway at this point had curved around to run alongside the jail, and Charlie led us down a short beaten track to the river to water our horses. Hey Jasseth, there aren't any temples that we'll be passing today, but there's a nice quiet clearing just further down if you want to go do the ritual of gratitude. I was momentarily confused. The what? Oh, I just thought with it being Sunday and all you might want to. Ah, right. Nah, I'm not particularly religious, so it doesn't matter. Feel free to do it if you want. Charlie chuckled. No, don't worry about me. All that temple stuff is for humans. Nyathi don't, need it. Do not go at home. Well, on the festivals and stuff, yeah, but not every week. My father's a bit skeptical. And he thought followers of the temple were tree-hugging hippies, but I didn't need to mention that. Huh. I thought humans were really into the temple. They are in the capitals, at least. The Great Temple of Little is a rather beautiful place, and the High Priestess really is a lovely woman. You know the High Priestess of Lil? This was unexpected. Hanyash? Well, I met her many years ago when she was still an acolyte. I knew her mentor. The High Priestess of Lil is Nyathi blood. More surprises. Well, yes, of course, they often are. There's lots of Nyathi bloods in the capitals, doing a variety of interesting things. Will I get to meet her? Charlie laughed. Maybe, but we still have to get there first. If you're not going to do a ritual, then maybe we should get back on the road. Later that afternoon, the vineyards on our right gave way to wide grain fields, almost ready for harvest. To our left, the side of the highway was covered with groves of willow trees, the ground thick with blackberry brambles as the sounds of the jail became audible from the road. We passed under a stand of elms and rounded a bend, and at once we could see the river, washing gracefully past, at least twice the width of the stream that meandered through our forest at home. A huge curved stone bridge crossed the river ahead of us, onto a road that stretched west through trees and fields all the way to Fortesta in the south. On the near side of the bridge was a cairn of rocks, piled just higher than a man's head, and I realised with a start that it signalled the end of the jail's head district. Charlie saw what had caught my eye, and he smiled gently. This is it, Jazz. We're leaving the ancestral home. Yuh, I muttered. Guess we're in the real world now. I also realised as we rode closer that there were 2 armed guards on our side of the bridge. They both wore chainmail and open-faced helms that glinted in the sun, and over their chests they wore tabards and the green and white stripe of the National Armed Force. More worrying were the long pikes they both held upright, but lowered as we approached. Surely this was normal. If I remembered my geography lessons properly, this was a major intersection. We were now out of the rather sheltered and quiet Jail's Head Valley. We were getting close to Lil. I hadn't really considered the possibility, but I suppose there were brigands and highwaymen types around. I wasn't that naive. Let me handle this, okay, Jazz? And try not to pull rank unless you really have to. We don't want to antagonize them. Charlie spoke quietly to me as he slid off his horse and walked up to the guards holding the reins. I did the same as the guards moved up to meet us with more than a hint of belligerence in their swagger. Charlie lifted off his hood and nodded politely to the men. Guardsmen, how fared the road today? To their credit, neither of the men looked surprised to see a Nyathi traveller, but instead of the usual friendliness that Charlie seemed to elicit from everyone we met, the guards regarded first him and then me with expressions that were distinctly unpleasant. One of them twisted a smile. Not so good today, elephant. The last bit was muttered, but still loud enough for us to hear. Charlie was unperturbed, but the unease that I had felt was bubbling into something like anger. These 2 pieces of yokel trash had weapons for Lilwich's sake, and they appeared to be threatening an important Nyathi emissary in the Lord's bloody ear. Didn't they know who we were? Has there been trouble, good sirs?" Charlie was trying to ingratiate himself with his wide-eyed sincerity, but the guards appeared to be almost angry themselves, and I didn't know why, but it seemed to be aimed at Charlie. "They're going the wrong way," the other guard muttered to the first, and they exchanged glances. "Still, what's he doing with this pretty young thing, eh?" This obviously referred to me, and I was rather appalled by the insinuation. I was about to open my mouth and protest at this disrespectful treatment when I glanced at Charlie. His expression changed from one of concern to gentle encouragement, and he squinted almost imperceptibly at the men. Suddenly, I didn't feel angry at the guards anymore. If anything, I felt a bit sorry for them, standing guard at such a remote and boring spot. They must have felt some terrible hurt in the past to be directing such anger at Charlie, a man they'd never met before. Now they were lowering their weapons, one of them looking thoughtful, the other a bit sad. "Please, men, we've been travelling for some time and would be extremely grateful for any news of the city," Charlie pleaded quietly, though his big, unblinking eyes never left them. The men almost tripped over each other in their eagerness to respond. "Well, it's like this, see. What we've heard is," they both began at the same time. Charlie laughed good-naturedly and they both grinned. This time only one of them spoke. "Well, we've been sent out here to keep an eye on the roads. There's been some folk disappearing, most of them queer half-breeds. Everyone knows it's Larvasalian, but we've got to keep a lookout just the same." He peered at me more closely. "Are you alright there, Sonny? He hasn't done anything to you?" The suggestion was so completely laughable, I giggled a bit as Charlie answered for me. "Jesseth is Niathi blood, and I am his mentor, and we are on our way to the academy in Lille. Please, tell me why Larvasalian would be interested in Mingles." The Niathi phrase for "the family" was one of the few that had been absorbed into general human dialect, but only as a contemptuous reference to a semi-mythical criminal syndicate that operated out of Lille, whispered about as some sort of guild of assassins, and held by legend to operate under the protection and guidance of a Niathi goddess, referred to as La Min. I was pretty sure Larvasalian was little more than a fairy story, but even if they were real, Charlie would hardly be worried about murderers, would he? "Well, who else would be doing killings in the city? We would know, wouldn't we? It's you lot that are going missing, and it has to be something to do with magic." The guard fell silent as Charlie squinted at him again. "If that is all the news from the city, gentlemen, we must be on our way." Charlie was smooth and encouraging. "You two are doing a difficult but important job out here. You should be proud of yourselves." On cue, the guard straightened and smiled. "Carry that pride with you, kind sirs, and treat those who pass this way with the dignity and respect you expect from yourselves." Charlie turned from the guardsman and mounted his horse, gesturing that I should do the same. With a salute to the men who were still standing there, grinning proudly, he wheeled around and set off down the road that led to Lille. We cantered some way in silence. I thought about the guards. How difficult it would be to guard a bridge that, for all it was a major crossroads, was smack bang in the middle of nowhere. To be sent so far from the city, from the garrison where no doubt most of their friends were still stationed, and surely they had families to miss. I found I was proud of them, doing their duty and following orders so well. They hadn't been that bad, really. Really? I shook my head. It felt a bit clouded as I remembered the things that they had said to Charlie as they had lowered their weapons at us. They had called Charlie an elephant for Lil Bitch's sake, with voices filled with spite and with rage in their eyes. They were common effing racists, and I felt proud of them? What the hell had just happened? My horse had slowed to a walk, and Charlie looked back, surprised to see what the hold-up was. He waited as I caught up and urged his horse to walk beside mine as I looked straight ahead, thinking. Finally, I turned to him. "You magicked us," I managed flatly. My earlier rush of good feeling for the guards had dissipated, and I recollected the confrontation with growing bitterness. "You magicked them, and you magicked me. What the hell, Charlie?" He sighed and settled uncomfortably in his saddle. "Yes, Yes? That's all you can say? What the hell happened back there? He sighed again and collected himself. Yes, he said more firmly. The Hjavan involved is a form of psychosolitary, but not particularly complicated. You'll learn about it in time at the academy. I grunted, but he continued. Your masters will be able to explain it better than I, but you direct your Hjavan to release extra serotonin to lift the mood of the subject, then shift the brainwaves so that they are more susceptible to suggestion. He shrugged, embarrassed. Sounds easy when I put it like that, doesn't it? Sounds like you bloody hypnotized them. My bitterness was welling up. Yeah, you hypnotized them and you hypnotized me. I looked him in the eye, suddenly furious. You can't do that to me. You're supposed to be my mentor for Lil Bitch's sake, and I can't even bloody trust you not to magic me when it suits you. Charlie looked hurt, but I didn't care. I couldn't even trust him. I'm sorry, Jess, I really am. They could have decided to hurt us. And you couldn't trust me not to stuff it up. You had to magic me like I'm some idiot guard scum. Charlie smiled ruefully, infuriatingly. You looked like you were going to pull rank on those two. He shrugged apologetically. I needed to defuse the situation quickly, and I needed to find out what the problem in the city was. Oh, yeah. I'd forgotten Charlie's apparent concern about the Lyavasalian thing. Well, if he thought I was going to ask him about it, he could shove it up his ass. Look, JJ, I'm sorry. Oh, bugger off, Charlie. I get it. You don't trust me, so you had to magic me. I get it. Now just leave me the hell alone. Charlie just nodded wisely, the smug bastard. I kicked my horse into a gallop so I wouldn't have to look at his stupid grey face anymore. We rode hard all afternoon. I was still furious and wanted to punish Charlie with the pace. I barely noticed as the road curved beside the river as it swung in a northwesterly course, and the flat plains began to roll gently into green hills. Until now we had still been within the Jail's Head district, where grapevines and high-cropping corn were farmed on every available acre of the flat bottom of the valley. Jail's Head's wealth was derived from the excellent wines that were produced from the gravelly soil and long hot summer weather the valley enjoyed. Animal husbandry was concentrated in the foothills of the Rye Mountains that framed the region, although that was limited mainly to the farming of alpacas, who thrived in the dry runs on the steep hills, and whose beautifully soft fleeces were the other pride of the district. Now that we were heading northwards up towards Lille, even the quality of the air was changing. Small roads frequently branched off the highway to the east, meandering round the gentle rolling hills and out to the mountain range that was misty and distant to the north and east. Here, the hills and valleys were patchworked with small fields, edged with stone walls and trees that were almost beginning to yellow with the turn of the season. The paddocks were dotted with cows, farmed for their milk and their meat, as well as for their hides, which were cured in the small tanneries that dotted the riverbank periodically. Herds of small white sheep grazed aimlessly, raised for their meat and their wool, which made strong, inexpensive cloth when spun or felted. This I knew from long, tedious hours with my tutors. Though as I had never left Jail's Head before, this was the first time I had actually seen such intense farming in action. The sun was setting as I finally slowed my pace and allowed Charlie to catch up. Lumps of cloud drifted above us, steel grey in the centre but haloed with pink and orange as colour leached from the sky, which flamed gold as the heavy sun sank out to the west. How do you feel about camping tonight? We passed the last inn for a few miles back. Oh, good. In my furious haste, we had overshot our accommodation. My mother had insisted I take a sleeping bag, just in case, but seriously? Camping? Why didn't Charlie stop me? Sorry I didn't stop you, Jazz, but we are taught that adolescent males are best left to themselves when angry. Oh, good. So you know how we work then, I muttered grumpily. What do you think mentors spend 10 years studying? He grinned at me, but I just snorted. You're not still cross at me, are you? I guess I wasn't really. Not anymore. And Charlie was looking so concerned I managed to flick him a smile. Nah, we're alright. Good. Charlie pointed ahead to a small path that branched off to our left, heading down to the river. I think there's a wee campsite down there. What do you reckon? It was as good an idea as any, so we guided our horses off the highway. The path led down to a clearing surrounded by willows and overhung with tall ash trees. We dismounted in silence, and Charlie gestured that I start gathering firewood while he tended to the horses. There were lots of low branches round the perimeter of the clearing, filled with dry rot that I could break off in my hands, and I collected a few large bundles and placed them beside a pit rimmed with rocks that indicated that this clearing was used frequently by travellers. Charlie returned from the river, leading our mounts and bearing a kettle filled with water. We unsaddled the horses and gave them a quick brush before tying them to a tree well within reach of a nice grassy patch of ground, and Charlie got to work on the fire. He broke up some of the smaller branches for kindling and arranged them in a pyramid in the fire pit. With a blink of his eyes they sparked into life, and he began adding larger pieces of wood as the fire caught. He hung his kettle over the fire and began rummaging in his saddlebags. He pulled out some dried salted meat, along with the fresh bread and cheese that Rudy had pressed on us this morning. So only this morning. As well as the little sack that held his collection of moss. What do you think, Jazz? Do we deserve it? Well, I sure as hell do, Charlie. You magicked me today. He chuckled in relief. I'm sorry, Jazz. I really am. I won't do it again. Promise. Better bloody not. He laughed and pulled out the little red pouch of the laughing moss. I think we'll have some red tea. It's nice and smooth that way. He lifted the lid of the kettle that was already steaming away and sprinkled a small handful of the moss over the water. But first, shall we eat? The food was basic, but it sure hit the spot. The meat was chewy and delicious, and the soft cheese spread easily on the fresh bread. When we had finished, Charlie procured 2 mugs from his bag and poured the tea, settling himself close to the fire with an extra blanket wrapped around his shoulders. We sipped the hot, herbaceous tea as the sky darkened and stars began to sparkle down through the trees. So, I started, breaking the companionable silence. You let me ride all this way on purpose? Charlie smiled and considered for a moment. Well, yes. I realized you were angry with me, and so I thought I'd leave you to it until you had calmed down. I scowled, feeling foolish to have been so obvious. It's okay, Jazz. I knew there was no point trying to pressure you into talking when you were so cross. You might have said something you'd regret, and you needed time to work it all out in your own head. He sighed wistfully. Human females, on the other hand, completely different kettle of fish. Yeah, I encouraged. Anything about girls would be helpful. Even if it came from a Niathi male who had only studied them. Oh, yes. You shouldn't let females brood when they're angry, and the longer you leave it, the worse it gets. It makes them think you don't care. You have to let them get it out of their systems, so you might have to put up with a bit of screaming and crying, but a happy equilibrium will soon be reached. The last bit sounded like he was remembering the words from a textbook, and I grimaced. Sounds like a load of bollocks, Charlie. But he just laughed and refilled our mugs from the kettle. Hang on, Jazz. I've got a bit of Yavin to do before we get too merry. He stood and walked slowly around the perimeter of the camp, including the trees and the patch of grass the horses were still munching happily on. He circled the camp again, and then a third time before coming to sit back down by the fire. It was a ridiculous sort of ritual, and I giggled at him. What? You want protection, don't you? I just went round and changed the air so it'd be safe. Safe? I spluttered. You walked around in a circle 3 times. Charlie flapped a hand at me, aggrieved. Yes, 3 times. 1 for sound, 1 for visibility, and 1 so that no one can come in. Yeah, righto. How'd you do that? The Yavin changes the properties of the air particles. You can do it all at once, of course, but it's a bit of a pain, and I'm wary, and protection stuff like this isn't really where my skills lie. Go see for yourself. So I stood and went to where Charlie had walked behind me. I reached out, expecting nothing, but my hand touched something solid. The air was actually solid, as if there was an invisible brick wall surrounding the camp. Shit, Charlie, I said to myself back down. That's pretty cool. Charlie beamed. You'll learn this stuff, don't you worry, kiddo. There's lots of things in the physical world that can be manipulated with Yavin, when you know how. Hypnosis, shields, fire. It didn't seem possible that I could do this stuff, but Charlie seemed to think I could. Charlie believed I had this Yavin. Unbelievable. I sipped at my tea. I was feeling surprisingly happy, giddy even, and now excited. Jazz, Charlie began, looking at me. Yeah? This word you keep saying. Bollocks. What does it mean? I gasped with a laugh. Seriously? I thought you knew everything about humans. You spent 10 years wandering around up here, and you don't even know what bollocks are. Charlie grinned and rubbed at his brow, embarrassed. Yeah, but there are regional differences in your language, you know. Especially the, colloquialisms. They try. They can't teach us everything. I giggled. Bollocks means balls. Testicles. Charlie snorted. I thought it meant your ass, like your buttocks. Ha! Nope. It means your danglies. Danglies, Charlie hooted. That's brilliant. I was grinning at his delight. Yeah, gangoolies. Charlie snorted, picking up at the game. Nads. Knackers. Cullions. Family jewels. Jingleberries. Plums. Boars. Gentlemen's vegetables. Gentlemen's vegetables? Charlie cried, almost hysterical. And then I was thankful for a soundproof Yavin barrier as we both shrieked with laughter, gasping for air, and completely unable to speak any more. The fire had died down to embers by the time we had exhausted ourselves with laughter, telling stupid jokes and swapping stories. My face ached as I crawled into my sleeping bag. We said our goodnights, and I was feeling a bit drifty when I remembered something. Charlie? Why were you worried about those assassins in Lille? Charlie sighed and shuffled in his sleeping bag. Were you hoping I would forget about it? He chuckled. Very astute, demurred Jasseth. He lifted himself onto his elbows, and I could see his eyes glittering red in the ember's light. I spent some time in Lille when I was a journeyman. I made some good friends there. Oh. And when I left Vio, I went to Fortesta to receive my assignation. Then I came straight to you, so I haven't had a chance to go back yet. Which was an answer, and also not an answer at all. He settled back down and we lay in silence for a bit. Is Laman really a Niathi goddess? He sighed quietly. Oh, no. She's not a goddess. There was silence again. I was almost asleep when I'm sure I heard him mutter. She's pretty close, though. I thought about questioning him further, but weariness clouded my mind, and before I could think of anything else to say, I was asleep. Yay! End of chapter 3. Now we're on to chapter 4. I'm going to read that next time. Right. Yay! Good job, Taffy. One more.